So after slogging through the latest episode of Strange New Worlds, I needed a refresher, so of course I turned on the Orville, the second episode of the Orville New Horizons, and this one called Shadow Realms, which does have a bit more of action in it as far as adventure goes, but it still in some ways has the elements of the first episode in that it's that was a very quiet episode and focusing on Dr. Finn and her feelings towards Isaac, and then the rest of the ship and the whole problem of Isaac and how they dealt with it, and it was all rather appropriate, and I just saw it as something to get it out of the way, because otherwise it's kind of a boy, this is a really slow and somber show to start your new season with, and in the hopes of dragging people into it. I mean, it was fine for me, but I didn't know how that would go for a newer audience or what have you. But it is an element of the story that they couldn't just ignore. They had to deal with it and all that. And yet, the second episode, it's kind of more of the same. And I was like, I don't know. If there's any criticism, it's that. I think it was a little too slow. I think you need to pick up the pace moving on. I mean, I'm sold. I enjoyed the episode. But I think it is a little slow in the pacing, and the humor is just completely gone. I mean, there's little not completely gone. There's gags and lines here and there and that kind of thing, but nowhere near what it used to be. And granted, there was this turning point when they defeated the Kalons, and that really the whole shift of the show changed after that. And that was kind of a clever way of doing it. And it's like, hey, after something like that, you can't really go back to being the silly sitcom guys in space. But still, the crew is the crew. And I would have thought some of that, you got to have some of that brought back in. They still had some lines here and there, but it was almost out of place somewhat. It hasn't quite fused in the way that it should be, I would think. But what have you, this episode, there's some interesting things. There's another, the fallout from the Kalon War. They still have this difficult alliance with the Krill, and they're like, as soon as this is over, the Kalon menaces, we're back to killing you, bastard. Oh, wow, this is a great peace talk. And so there's funny characters in it, even when they're threatening genocide and all that sort of good stuff. But again, it's another episode kind of focusing on Dr. Finn as her ex-husband shows up, and he's an admiral now, and he's been put in charge of this negotiation with them to get permission to go through their territory of space to explore this region that's unexplored. And unexplored for good reason. The Krill warned them. They said, hey, it's a haunted part of space. There's demons. And of course, they just laughed that off. And stupid religious superstitions and all that. Well, sure. But it's actually, religion and myths and stuff can be derivative of facts, in the sense that they just didn't understand. That was the best way they could explain what happens. There is a possession in this, and it's all very sinister. So they go in, and it's a pocket of space where it's all completely dark. So of course it's getting scary, and they find this strange, construction, if you will, that they suspect is some sort of space station. They explore it and everything. And it looks like it's abandoned or whatnot. Well, the Admiral gets sprayed with God knows what, and that's the first thing. This is a mistake that, especially when it's this strange new thing, strange new world, you might want to put your spacesuits on. You see this. I saw it like in Alien Covenant, which is a god-awful movie. But the most obvious thing is like, wear your spacesuits. You don't know what the planet is. It just so stupid. But anyway, they make the same mistake. They're going in there. But only the Admiral at first gets infected. And they're like, oh my God, whatever it is, it's rewriting his DNA. And so apparently these stations are put out to spread their DNA, patterns or what have you in other species, take them over, and that's how they conquer other civilizations in space. And when they do detect another ship coming, they don't engage it or anything. They manage to escape after they're done with their problem there. But the idea being, and that was a bit clever in how they explained it, is that, they said, oh, it's it's demon possession and stuff like that. Well, it's possession by this invading species or whatnot that's doing this and setting traps for people. And so it turns them into these sort of bug-like creatures, sort of like, even better than Jeff Goldblum, because they do look more bug-like. But that's kind of what happens to the poor Admiral, Dr. Finn's ex-husband. He was trying to get it back on with her, but she turned him down. So the poor bastard, all this happens to him. But I guess she used his heartstrings to get him to leave the ship, because they were getting ready to flood the whole system with, pesticides. but they decided to leave and escape to the oncoming ship so they can join their new people now, because they're basically a new race. But that's the thing. Once he was infected and turned, he could spit the stuff in other people's faces, and then they would turn into bug people, and on and on and on. So there was like, the whole ship's dark, and they're running around. And of course, this one is very reminiscent of a Next Generation story, where, Picard went on a trip in the shuttle, him and Data, and then they come back, and the ship is just drifting. Its power systems are down and everything, and something's happened. And they go in, and it was some sort of accidental viral infection that happened that de-evolved everybody. That's what happened. It's not exactly they were turned into another species, although Geordi, that happened to him in an episode. So it's not new territory. It's, I'm sure even Next Generation didn't really come up with it. I'm sure there's sci-fi novels and stuff. There's some threads or some, not threads, similarities from Alien and stuff like that, but that's to be expected in this sort of thing. But the way they coached it, and I thought it was kind of a clever thing to say. They're, according to the Krill, it's demons and demonic possession and that sort of thing. It's just the demons are aliens, So, and even in their way of explaining it, they may even understand that. But that's just the differences between the two. And the Orville crew, especially the Admiral, they kind of laugh it off, But, well, not laughing anymore. And because it was a good makeup job on this species and stuff. And so there's still something of the Admiral left in the bug man, I guess, who was the leader of the other bug men. To where for Dr. Finn, he decides to, let's go, guys, and they leave. But he says, we're not leaving forever, meaning this is something they'll revisit. This could be a new foe. That's actually the organic version of what the threat of the Kaylon are. It's sort of like the Borg, and again, another mimicking of it. In Voyager, where the Borg had this organic species that they were at war with. And so here you have something like this, where it's these bug people who just basically infest galactic civilizations and whatnot. And so this could turn the tide with the Kaylon War, that maybe that'll make peace with the Kaylons, because there's a bigger threat with this thing. But yeah, it's interesting. Hopefully they do follow up on it and that kind of thing, because it sets that as a threatening, sinister force out there. But ultimately, it's surrounded more about the quiet story for the Doctor and her past relationship and where she is now and all this sort of stuff. And just, even though he wanted to try again, she didn't want to, because it hurt so much the first time around. She didn't want to put herself in that. Plus, she's still got a thing for Isaac. And there is some kind of funny back and forth between the Admiral and Isaac and all that. So yeah, there is that. It just feels a little slow, and I'm worried about that because I want the show to continue. I'm hoping that it can achieve a fourth season. I know there's been talk of a movie to cap it off, but I'd rather a fourth season. And so some people might hear all this hype and tune in and say, "Golly, it's just get to the point." It's one of those things, and I think they need to tighten it up a little, and hopefully the pace picks up with some other, perhaps more adventurous episodes. But still, Shadowrun is a good one. It opens up a lot of things, even though, yeah, it's copying other stuff. There's stuff you've seen repeated, just like the current Star Trek shows do. But again, there's an awful lot of science fiction stories and whatnot, and a lot of times these things get repeated and picked and choose. And when you're dealing with something like some sort of parasitic infection that's part of an alien plot, they're all going to end up very similar. And then it's sort of things like cyborgs taking over and all that sort of stuff. The Borg are very much the Cybermen of Doctor Who and stuff like that. It's going to happen. It's how you operate the elements there. It's just like they all have spaceships, so that kind of thing is how it plays out. And here it was wrapped around this sad story of a couple that sort of missed their chance and ruined it, and it's and in some ways they both regret it, but only really one of them had moved on, and then this horrible thing happens to the other ones. Yeah, he went Jeff Goldblum. You never go full Jeff Goldblum. I'm talking about The Fly, of course. Anyway, which is another thing. Oh yeah, they copied that. Well, whatever. So yeah, I enjoyed the show. I just hope the slow pacing doesn't turn other people off who are just being introduced to it. I think it's check out the other episodes and give it a shot. This is one of the episodes that's trying to do its best in spite of all the attitudes you get from other shows and franchises and whatnot. This is one of the very good ones, and I highly recommend it.